Composting Basics for Beginners. What is composting? Composting is the recycling of natural matter such as yard waste and food scraps into a fertilizer-like substance that's great for enriching the soil, but it is so much more than that. Composting could keep thousands of tons of material out of landfills. And this is important because when organic waste decomposes in landfills, it does so in an environment with no oxygen, where anaerobic bacteria do the work of decomposition. Those bacteria produce methane, a greenhouse gas that is more than 80 times as potent as carbon dioxide. Landfills are one of the top sources of methane in the United States. So, by composting at home, you're not only getting a free fertilizer for your home garden, but you are helping protect the planet. So what do you do to compost? Well, it's simple. The first thing you want to do is get a vessel of some sort to collect your food scraps. This could be something as simple as a bowl or something more elaborate like a tin with a lid and liners and filters, so that way you have a more pleasant system for composting indoors. Once your collection vessel is filled and ready to go outside, you can have something as simple as just a hole in the ground or something more elaborate like a tumbler. We have both a tumbler and a designated constructed pit type area for compost. The food scraps go in the tumbler to keep down any unwanted pests, and the majority of the yard waste goes in the open air bin. There is a certain ratio that you need to keep in mind to have a really good quality compost that doesn't attract flies or any unwanted pests. The two main ingredients of the perfect compost are green ingredients and brown ingredients. Green ingredients, when you think of those, you want to think of things that are wet and nitrogen rich. Brown ingredients are typically dry and carbon rich. Some examples of green ingredients are broccoli stalks, citrus rinds, coffee grounds, cooked plain pasta, cooked plain rice, corn cobs, corn husks, dead heads from flowers, dead plants, make sure they're disease-free, eggshells, fresh leaves, fruit and vegetable peels, grass clippings, holiday greenery such as natural wreaths or swags with non-organic material removed, houseplant trimmings, melon rinds, old dried herbs and spices that have lost their flavor, old vegetables that are no longer edible, seaweed, sod that you've removed to make new garden beds, spent bulbs, stale bread, tea leaves and paper tea bags, thinnings from the vegetable garden, and weeds that have yet to go to seed. Some examples of brown compost ingredients are bedding from chickens, bedding from hamsters, guinea pigs, or rabbits, brown paper lunch bags that have been shredded or torn, brown paper shopping bags that have been shredded or torn, chopped up twigs and small branches, core liners from hanging baskets, dried leaves, excelsior, fallen birds' nests, leftover peat or core from seed starting, nutshells, but you want to make sure to avoid walnut shells as they can inhibit some types of plant growth, pine cones, pine needles, pressed paper egg cartons torn into small pieces, raffia, sawdust from untreated wood, shredded newspapers, shredded non-glossy junk mail, shredded office or school papers, straw, toilet paper or paper towel or wrapping paper tubes, torn up plain corrugated cardboard boxes, non-glossy again, used paper coffee filters, used paper napkins, and wood chips. Now, if you notice from both of these lists, all the elements added, whether they're green or brown, are recommended to be in small sizes because the smaller the particle, the quicker that they will decompose. All the microbes and other things in your compost that are making the change from garbage to gardener's gold really can get to the particles if they're small. Not everything on those lists works good for everyone. For example, we do not put pasta or grains in our compost, not only because we don't eat them, but because they may attract pests and unwanted things to your compost pile that we certainly don't want in our garden. Now, getting back to that ratio between browns and greens. This is very well debated, and through my experience, basically you just want to keep an eye on how your compost is going along. Layering is key. You want to put a layer of the green compost and cover it with a layer of the brown compost. Being that the layer of green is wet, the brown will absorb that moisture and it'll help aerate and keep things moving in your compost. Your ratios depend on your weather and your environment. So they could be anywhere from 1:1 to 1 part green to 4 parts brown. It really depends on what works best for you. The best way to tell if your compost is working is to turn it and take a look and see what you see, or more importantly, what you smell. If it smells like a big nasty garbage heap, you probably have too many greens and need to add more browns because the moisture is getting trapped in there and it's not decomposing as well as it should. If it just smells earthy and more or less like dirt, you're on the right path and you have the right ratio. It's a good idea to turn your pile every 10 days. This works great for our tumbler system because the tumbler just tumbles. All you have to do is rotate the bin and it turns it for you. Now, in our pit area, we have to do it the old-fashioned way and get out either a pitchfork or a spade and turn it ourselves. Temperature affects the decomposition time. So the warmer the temperature of your bin, the faster decomposition is going to take place. Now, this isn't an issue for us here in Florida, but if you live farther north, where you get this thing called winter and snow, then your compost might come to a screeching halt during those times. A good idea, if you have the space, is to take a large garbage can and use that as your compost bin because you can move it from the outside to a sheltered area such as a garage or a shed. Worms are your friend when it comes to composting. They haven't made their way into our bin as it's a semi-closed environment, but in our open air container, they are plentiful in there and they're very happy because I follow some guidelines to keep them that way. The worms are going to help aid in the speed of your decomposition because they're going to eat many of your table scraps. Worms' favorite foods tend to be fruits that are non-acidic and green vegetables, carrots, anything that's a natural organic vegetable source and fruit source. However, they don't like onions or onion peels, citrus fruit, or anything strongly acidic. So avoid adding those if you are cultivating your worm commune. You may also find that your particular set of worms prefer some things over others, and you can use that information through observation to make sure your worms stay happy. There are some kitchen scraps that you certainly do not want to put in your compost. Not only will they take too long to decompose, but they will attract negative things into your compost pile that may completely change the composition of your compost and making it not usable in your garden. These things include meat and fish, bones, dairy, oil and butter, foods cooked in oil and butter, animal feces, and any plants that have been diseased or infected with an unwanted pest. The reason why you don't want to include debris from diseased or pest-ridden plants is because that can contaminate your new enriched soil that you would then replace into your garden, infecting a whole new crop. That's the basics of composting. If there's something in particular you have a question on, please feel free to leave it in the comments below and I'll get to you. If you have any topics that you'd like discussed, let me know that in the description below as well, and I'll see you next time on City Steading. Look up! There's another video you might like as well.